Hi everyone, this is Daniel here, and today we're going to do another project analysis video, and this time it will be on Zyon Grand. Here's the facade, and I think the main thing I want to cover today really is three main reasons I'm hearing on the ground why people have concerns about this project. So what are the three main concerns that I'm hearing on the ground? Mainly is this. Number one, because in 2025 alone, we are seeing a lot of launches in the central region area, namely in the River Valley and even up towards the Havelock area, like what we are talking about today, Zyon Grand. And understandably, within these few launches itself, for example, even with the upcoming plots, easily we could hit around 3,000 units in a pretty similar location. So will that be an issue? Number two, this Zyon Grand is not just a residential building. It also has service apartments components, also commercial and all that. So service apartments means that foreigners do have alternative rental options other than the condominium units here. So the question is, how will this affect the rental performance here? Because technically a portion of the market might be taken out to go to these service apartments. And then number three, the land price that was bought for Zyon Grand is $1,202 PSF PPR. But the question is, will they really launch at a good price? In fact, most are concerned that they will launch at a so-called expensive price. So we'll dive into how the other projects in the area has been priced, has been launched at, how it has been received, and what is considered an acceptable price or too expensive. Okay, so the first concern is there too much supply and competition. This is definitely a very valid concern, because we don't want to be in a situation whereby when we are trying to exit in the market, let's say when it TOPs or further down the road, actually the main concern will be during the TOP stage, right? Because usually that's when the most number of owners will be trying to sell at the same time. Usually because a lot of these are the investors who don't want to incur the mortgage costs after CSC, alright? So they're trying to cash out as soon as possible, and they don't want to incur also the interest costs and all that. Here's an example of Normanton Park. In fact, this is a screenshot from Property Guru quite recently only, and you can see that, we don't want to be in such a situation whereby, look at the number of 2-bedroom available on sale. This is on sale. There's more than 200, right? And in terms of for rental, 19 for rent, I think it's still alright, still not too bad. But in terms for sale, right, this is really quite a situation that you don't want to be in. So can I say that we can guarantee that we will not be in such a situation? Of course, you have to look into the numbers, the actual number of supply. But if let's say we want to prepare ourselves for such a situation, then can I say that in general, number one, we will try to go into a location where the supply isn't so much. Number two is we must be prepared in any case, in any time, that we will never know what really will happen in the future, right? So if we can prepare ourselves for such a situation where we don't expect a quick flip, we don't expect like, after we buy 3, 4, 5 years, we must sell and must make a profit. I think having such a mindset towards property investment actually is a little bit toxic, a little bit detrimental, right? We should always be prepared for a longer term. Can we hold it for 10 years? Can we hold it for 15 years? I'm not saying that we have to do that before we see a profit, but based on a property investment strategy that is sound, we will have to look at this kind of risk factors. Just a quick overview on the upcoming new supply alone in this area. Just a very quick one. The top here are what has been confirmed, and that includes Zyon Grand. That's approximately about 1,800 units already. And then there's still the upcoming River Modern and also the River Valley Parcel C, which I just give estimated 500 per project. You're looking at easily 2,800 or even more. Of course, significant portion of this will be the smaller units, like our 2 bedrooms, because a significant number of them will be the 2-bedroom units. So that would be where the concern lies, right? Because this year alone, we're already launching this, and then in the upcoming year 2026 probably we'll see 2 more being launched. So this is definitely something we need to pay attention to. Quick brief intro. The facade, I think taste is subjective, right? But personally, I feel that it's quite interesting, quite outstanding. I think one important thing to point out is that for this Zyon Grand is going to be 62 stories high, generally much taller, at least close to twice the height compared to a lot of the surrounding developments, except for Promenade Peak, which is pretty much similar in terms of the height. But why this is important? Okay, so why am I showing you this comparison between the different projects? do a quick comparison in terms of the appearance. Is it different? Is it very different? To me, I personally really would say that in terms of the architecture, the design, how tasteful it is, really plays a part in terms of the buyer's impression towards a project. And if I were to compare the most recent launches, right, I think that the design really is a very big difference. So for example, this one is your River Green, bottom one is your Riviera, and then on the right is our Promenade Peak. Once again, taste is subjective, definitely I agree. But to me, I feel that if I were to really put them side by side, the three on the right, they look quite similar. Whereas Zyon Grand really manages to stand out with the architectural design. And I think that this is quite important as a buyer or even as a tenant. When they come and compare in this area, they will compare all of these choices. So which is the one that can give them an impression straight away that stands out is a huge plus point to me. So once again, you can compare, you can have a closer look at all this. On the left is Riviera, in the center is your River Green, and then on the right is Promenade Peak. So you can pause, you can go back to the previous frame, and then you can see, is there really a big difference or not? So appearance, facade wise, I really feel that the Zyon Grand manages to stand out. Now in terms of location, why is this important to compare also? Because imagine if today you are a tenant and you're looking for an apartment to rent in this area, definitely you will compare not just the rates, but you will compare the different projects in the same area, because you want to see which one you feel better, which one the facilities better, the condition and the layout, right? But when I'm talking about location, just imagine for now that the prices, the rents, the unit layouts, all similar. Like it's not the main thing that you're comparing now, just comparing in terms of location. So imagine that you are a tenant and you go and view all of these surrounding projects, and right here is Zyon Grand, and over here is your Promenade Peak lah. So Zyon Grand is the only one that is integrated to the MRT, the Havelock MRT. So assuming everything else, the facilities, everything is comparable, it's not a big thing, a big concern. Which project would you choose to rent for your convenience? The most convenient choice is definitely Havelock. So in a situation where there's competition, where people are trying to fight in terms of prices, and of course, hopefully it's not a race to the bottom, right? Usually there will be some sort of a price support. But in the time where there's high competition, who will win? It will be in terms of convenience. And that is where Zyon Grand will have its competitive edge. But of course, when you are in a position where maybe supply is lesser than your demand, then that's when, with a competitive location, you will be able to then call for higher pricing, higher rental. So just now what I mentioned was more towards convenience, the convenience factor. But now I'll share something that I think not a lot of people talk about in the current market, which is visibility, right? So what do I mean by visibility is how known is a project or a specific landmark or building to the public. And one thing that helps with this is also actually the location of that building, that landmark. So like for example, Marina Bay Sands, any tourist, anybody will know of Marina Bay Sands. Why? It's because from a distance you can actually see so big, so prominent, so tall skyscraper, right? That's why usually in many countries, actually the skyscrapers are one of the most iconic landmarks. Maybe I give another example, which is perhaps the Interlace, right? This very unique Lego style project, right? And this one definitely also, when you're on the highway, you can see it from afar. A lot of people will notice it, even if they don't know what is it, right? But they definitely will have seen it before. And that's why it stands out. So this thing actually applies also to Zyon in a very unique way. Why is this so? So here you can see on this map, right here is where Zyon Grand is. Here is our PP Promenade Peak. And then on the right side is where our Riviera. And then on top is River Green. So the advantage here that you can see, right, actually for Zyon Grand is actually so close to this main road here. So yes, definitely if your units are facing towards the main road, that might be an issue, right? I'm not talking about that aspect for this part. It's more of if you look at it from a further away point of view, right? So you see Zyon over here, and so above us is where we have our towards Orchard Road, Great Wall City and all that, right? Here is our Havelock Road, and then here towards our Red Hill and all that. So you see, because of the way the roads are intersecting over here, actually no matter which way you're coming to or from, you are actually going to see this Zyon standing very prominently, because once again, don't forget, this is actually a 62-story high. And then yes, Promenade Peak will be behind, right? Promenade Peak will be behind, but it's actually behind it. So the one closer to the main road actually will have the most exposure compared to all the other projects around here, especially those that is kind of, I'm sorry to say this, but they're kind of being hidden behind over here. And just for context, if you want to know where River Green is, actually River Green is actually hidden over here. So River Green in this aspect, right, just for comparison's sake, it's more of a if you know kind of a project, right? You really got to know of it, or maybe you have to do quite a bit of digging, for example, next time in the future. Okay, and the final point that I want to share in comparison of these few projects is the land size. Now, why does land size matter is if you compare a smaller land to a larger land, definitely the larger land has a better chance of having more impressive facilities. In terms of the landscaping, you can feel more of a wow factor as compared to smaller land. I mean, that is a given, right? So you see, just looking at the plots of land, you can kind of tell what I'm trying to get at here. This over here is River Green, and it's going at about 100k square feet. Then we have our Promenade Peak that's going roughly around 99 to 100,000 also. So it's quite similar, even though actually you see the River Green one actually is kind of like a triangular shaped land, right? And then finally we have our Zyon over here, which is going at 160,000. So I'm quite optimistic that developers will put this to good use, build something nice, something impressive, something that can really stand out, not only from the facade point of view, but when the buyers or when the tenants come in, they're gonna have a one-of-a-kind type of impression compared to the other projects around there. So with all of these factors that I shared, right, with your convenience, with the facade, with your visibility, all of this I feel combined together gives Zyon Grand a pretty interesting edge over the other projects. And so with all of these factors that I just mentioned, number one, your convenience, number two, your visibility, and number three, with the land size being able to stand out, all of this holistically come together, right? Actually, these are the things that can help a project to stand out against its competitors in a case where there is going to be competition in the future. So if you know already that you're entering into a project, it doesn't even have to be this location, it can be any other location. For in the future you are looking to invest in another area, another project, you could use the same principles as mentioned here to help you to identify which are the ones that you can bet on. So if you found what I shared so far useful, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then that's where I'll be sharing even more property insights to help you with your investment journey. And now on the second topic, will the service apartments component steal some of the tenants, some of the potential tenants, and even spoil the market for our Zyon Grand? So I think we first need to understand what's really the main difference. What are the main difference that we should be paying attention to? Which is, in Singapore, there are three main ways a foreigner or someone can rent temporary residence, right? And in general, you're looking at either hotel, service apartments, or condo. So for hotel, definitely we all know is the most expensive and usually for very short term, right? Then we move on to service apartments, and this one usually it's slightly longer than our hotel, and that's why it will be slightly more expensive than the hotels. And then lastly, we have our condos, which is really long term. I mean, usually you're looking at easily 1 year to even 3 years at a time, right? And generally speaking, it will be the least expensive. So definitely, if let's say for those tenants that cannot make up their mind between something mid-term, something long-term, right, then maybe these are the main ones who you might have to compete against, right? Because now for service apartments 2, the type 2, right, actually they can rent for even 6 months. But condo also can be 6 months minimum, right? So definitely your service apartments here may pose some risk to your potential competition in the future. In fact, there's 373 units here, so I definitely want to be quite careful about this. Why do I say this? Is because developers ultimately, right, they bought the land, or the cost for each unit definitely will be lesser than yours, right? So even though logically speaking the service apartment rates should be higher, but in a very bad or in a very dire market situation, actually if they want to, they can actually lower their rates and not be as impacted as you are. for example. Because for you as an investment unit holder, you need to take care of your interest costs, your property tax, your MCSC fees, right? And even agent fee for finding the tenant. So for you, you have all these costs that you have to pay attention to when you are finding a tenant to rent in the future, right? But for the developer, there are costs involved that impact their cash flow may not be so serious as compared to yours. So of course, this is a little bit of an extreme scenario, right? Because as of right now, it's not like we expecting the market to crash until so bad. I'm just saying that this is something that potentially will affect your planning. So even though what I just mentioned is just a very real risk, but let's look at what's happening on the ground in terms of the real rates. So nearby Great Wall residences, based on last year rates, we can see that for a 2-bedder, they are looking at about 10.5 thousand per month. Okay, and then 3-bedder, let's just use a 13.5k. And if you to compare this to our Revere nearby rentals, right, you can see that the gap is actually quite substantial. So about 3,500 for the 2-bedder, right? And then for the 3-bedder, also roughly around there, like 3,500 to 4,000-ish. So the gap is quite substantial. And why I'm talking about the gap is because there's a so-called safety buffer. For example, if let's say this one were to really drop to, let's say, 9,000, my 7,000 2-bedder at Revere still can try to hold at 7,000. Don't have to really drop unless no choice. Okay, so that's why I say yes, but given the scenario that I was sharing just now, if let's say this one really dropped to 7,000 for example, then this one definitely will be affected as well lah. Okay, price analysis. Now we know that the developer CDL, I mean I'm quite a fan of their projects in general. Usually good quality, usually their pricing, they don't anyhow, and they rarely do those, you know, discounts that we see in some of the other projects, right? Don't want to name names, but anyway, I think these are good things that you can expect for the launch lah. So just a quick one, looking at past experiences, I think it's quite fair to say that we can take a 0.5% per floor level average. So that means from our second floor all the way to the highest floor, per floor level, we will see an average of 0.5% increase. Of course, there's going to be some floor levels where you will see larger jumps, or maybe there's certain floor levels where they are using lesser jumps. But on average, let's just use this 0.5% to do a projection. So let's say the developers, you know, they are very friendly and they start off with a $2,700 PSF for the lowest floor. Then we can expect it to go to about 3,500. In fact, if we look at Promenade Peak, if we look at River Green, right, which was recently just launched, their highest PSF transacted right now is also roughly around 3,500, close to 3,600. So I think with this projection actually is quite safe lah. Why? Because I think like you and I, or like buyers on the ground, we are also very worried about competition. So I think likewise for developer, they also will feel the same thing. They will also feel that if there's so many projects launching, if I don't launch at a good price, then my buyers are gonna go and just wait for the next better one. So I definitely need to price something sensible, something attractive. Then my buyers will be, will go for my products lah. In addition to this, is the price points. How would it affect your exit? Okay, so let's see how these numbers translate. Right, so for Revere, a 1-bedroom, currently the average for the rental is about $5,000. Okay, you can see from this. Now I just want to share with you that I think in terms of central region property, in fact I did one video about this quite recently. When it comes to central region, the rental yield actually is really quite important. The gross rental yield lah, of course I don't factor in the MCST and all this into the calculation. So for benchmarking purposes, Revere 1-bedroom, current prices is about 1.75, rental 5,000. You're looking at a yield, gross yield about 3.43%. In general, when you're looking at investment unit, we try to go above 3.5%. If it's above 4, that's fantastic, right? And in comparison, for Zyon Grand, if let's say our price, right, is okay, for this 1.374 is actually based on about $2,900 PSF. Okay, 2,900 PSF. And assuming the rental is exactly the same, 5,000. And don't forget, we are better location, integrated to MRT, there's commercial units, and I'm asking only for 5,000. And plus, this one is a 1+ study unit, whereas the Revere is just a 1-bedroom. My yield will be at 4.36%. 4.36% in this current market isn't easy to get, right? For newer projects, not so easy. And let's say, in terms of our exit strategy, we want to let the buyer, the future buyer, also be able to have a good rental yield, right? So let's say, even at 1.6 million, which 1.6 million actually is 3,375 PSF, okay? And assuming rental is the same, the yield is still 3.75%. I'm not saying that you definitely can sell at 1.6 or you must sell at 1.6 to make money, but just numbers wise, just based on the rental alone, right, you can see that actually is it possible. Even then, you would still be able to achieve better rental yield and look more attractive to investors compared to this example. So this price point, maybe they need to sell at a lower one to be competitive in the future, right? Because once again, when we compare the floor plan, Riviera 560 square feet, right? And then our Zyon is, the total size is smaller, partially because it doesn't come with the balcony. Do you absolutely need the balcony? I think this will be for you to decide. But the good news is that with this size, I'm still able to have a study area, right? So in terms of the usability of the unit, is there a very big difference? I would definitely not say so. So in terms of rental, can I get the same rental? I'm quite optimistic. And for this reason, I believe that this 1+ study is definitely something very interesting that we should consider. Now we go on to the 2-bedroom analysis. Okay, for 2-bedroom rentals for Riviera, we are looking at an average of about $7,000 for 2-bed, 2-bath. This one has no study, right? So current accepted prices on the resale market for Riviera is about 2.5 million and 2.4 million for a slightly smaller one. And based on the rentals, respective rentals, we're looking at roughly low 3%. So as I mentioned, if you're buying something for investment, especially in the central region, and your gross yield at this current market is not above 3.5%, I sincerely feel that it is not the best. In fact, didn't touch. Now in comparison for Zyon, 2-bed, 2-bath, they managed to make it really compact, 646, and let's say using a $2,900 PSF. Right? Again, why 2009 is because I see that could be roughly the middle range pricing that you can get. So assuming 2009, the rental, let's say also the same, right? Because good location and everything, your yield will be close to 4.5%. And I think that is actually really quite impressive. So once again, if let's say I sell this one at, let's say 2.1 million, so 2.1 million is about 3,250 PSF. The future buyer still can enjoy almost 4% rental yield. And in this case, right, if we want to, even more competitive with our rental pricing, can we go a little bit lower, 6,008, 6,007? Actually, we can. And we will still look very attractive compared to certain other projects around. And in fact, if we were to compare the two-bedroom examples that I was sharing with you, you will also find that actually there is not a lot of big differences in terms of the usability and the functionality, right? Because in fact, for this Zyon one, okay, you can see that actually there's even toilet in the master bath, whereas for Riviera doesn't have. This one you can have kind of like a small, tucked in kitchen kind of thing, right? This one is more longish. It's more longish. There's more space that you can use for both your kitchen and your dining, I suppose. Okay, but I think comparatively, it's really not that much of a difference. But definitely, it's not that much of a difference. In fact, the fact that you can get Zyon for so much cheaper and you can still rent out similar price, to me, it makes Zyon looks much more attractive. And I think you can get the idea of how this Zyon compares, right, in terms of the unit and the sizing. Alright, and as for the 3-bedder, I think you also kind of get the idea of how I do the analysis between the rentals, the existing resale prices. And for 3-bedroom, for the smaller 3-bedroom for Riviera, it's close to 1,200 square feet. It's just a 3-bedroom unit, no study, nothing special, and they are going average about $10,000 rental. So using that, okay, so on the left here, we have a Zyon 3-bed Deluxe. It's actually 861 square feet. Actually, this is a pretty good layout, I feel, because you can have like an enclosed kitchen and it also has a window. And then your master bathroom also has a window. Your common bathroom also has a window. So in terms of functionality wise, this one there's really nothing to complain about. It's quite your conventional 3-bedroom and it has everything you need. So keeping the size at 861 square feet, let's say you're looking at 2007 to 2009 PSF, it's gonna be roughly around this price. And based on the $10,000 rental yield, I had to calculate 3 times to confirm that this is correct. And let's say for some reason really you're not able to get $10,000 rent, even if it's slightly lower, you're probably gonna hit still in the high 4% gross yield range. So I think in terms of safety net, this is really quite strong lah. And then of course they also have a nicer 3-bedroom plus study. So this one, the study actually they give you an option of opening up your living space, right, to give you really a more luxurious feel in the unit. And on top of that, you also have a home shelter here. Kitchen is longer, and you even have a water closet. Common bath has window, master bath has window, and your balcony also actually is quite luxurious. In fact, I realized that for River Valley, I mean, this is not exactly River Valley, it's quite close lah, but for this locality, actually this kind of units where the balcony is bigger, actually you can really have like your sitting area outside, sofa, and really it's very nice and very luxurious. Of course, the point of this is that you have both options. You can go for the compact one and you can go for the larger one. The larger one, I mean, based on this layout, I feel that the PSF, there's a chance to go for higher. Maybe the average for this will be closer to 3,000 PSF already. So you may even go up to 2.6 to 2.7, right? But even then, your rental yield is still going to be quite safe. Probably it's going to be in your 4% range already. But this one, definitely, because usually when you're going for the larger quantum in terms of rental, that's when the tenants want to experience luxury in a sense. Your rooms, your living room needs to be shook lah, needs to feel good. Usually in this case, you can command a higher rental because these are the people who are generally quite affluent, quite rich, right? Okay, I've come to the end of my analysis for Zyon Grand, and I hope this has been insightful. If you would like further insights, further information, or research specific to your situation, feel free to reach out to me, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I'll be doing further deep dive, further research on how we can invest more safely and with more prudence with regards to the real estate market in the coming future. Alright, thank you.